Hey everybody, welcome back to the Lake Cities podcast with Chris and Lucas. We've taken a couple of weeks off because, just stuff happens.
Stuff happens.
Man, stuff happens. We found a gas leak at my house. I used, according to Atmos, I used enough gas to keep an elementary school warm.
Come on,
over the course of a month. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
And they were like, but the crazy thing was they went out and checked my house. And they're like, no, the meter's working fine, so we're just going to go. And I was like, wait a minute. We've been smelling gas since like June. You guys have been out here like 3 times. The guy was like, well, have they ever tested for a leak? I said, well,
that's your job.
As far as I know, I don't know. I'm not out here talking with the guys every time they're out here. So he put a little stick in the ground by the meter, and sure enough, dude, it smelled like eggs.
Wow.
Like just boiled eggs immediately. He's like, yeah, so I'm going to cap this line off, take your meter. Our landlord had to pay to have all the gas rerun, the yard line that went like from the meter to the house, and then everything in the house had to be redone whenever all that was updated. So... Man. Who knows? But they did give me a $3,500 gas bill this week. No lie.
Aren't you excited about that?
It was the best thing ever. And I'm calling them. I'm like, so like we had you come and check this out, and they're like, well, we'll figure something out. We'll figure out a payment plan. I was like, nope. Send this to a higher authority.
Hey, that's it.
Hand it to my wife.
Come on.
Baby, it's been a crazy couple of weeks. There are a couple of big events that are coming up in the next few weeks, though. Easter,
yes,
or Resurrection Day, depending on how you fancy saying that. That's April the 4th.
Yes,
and it looks like that's going to be a sunny day. We're looking at how we can potentially do that now that the world is open back up for business.
Oh yeah, for some,
sure. For some, for sure is right. So that's going to be a fun challenge. But on March the 27th. There is, if you guys heard, a couple of months back, we had Abby Germer from Refuge for Women, who was on the show. And she is helping with C7, which is the Coalition to End Human Trafficking, which comprises organizations within the 7 counties that kind of comprise North Central Texas. So it's law enforcement organizations, it's safe houses, it's ICE, and a few others that work with trafficking victims and rehabilitation centers and things like that work together. And they are actually doing a march in Kensington Square, so right by Chick-fil-A and all that, on March 27th from like 11 to 12:30.
Okay.
There might be a chicken sandwich place that's going to be providing some food that's over in that area. That's what I'm talking about. So do that, and then the Lake Cities area cities have gotten together, and it looks like they're going to be doing like a little community Easter egg hunt, like an eggs palooza or egg extravaganza, whatever else.
Make for an
egg pun
afternoon.
Yeah, whatever other egg pun. So go protest in the morning against human trafficking, and then go get your Easter egg hunt on after that.
Go get some eggs.
Yeah, that's you know what? That's going to be a busy little Saturday for the kids. Indeed. You know. Get some eggs, do a little protesting, and then you go from there to Home Depot to figure out whatever projects you got to. Yeah,
I should have been doing it earlier.
I need the 90 PVC pipe, but I need the 2-inch and all that. That's one of the joys of marriage. Is having to figure out all of those little bitty things.
Man, listen, I can't tell you how much money I have spent on buying tools, only to figure out it was still the wrong one, but I was too trifling to take it back.
You ruined the project because you're trying to use the wrong tool on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've talked a lot about, as a matter of fact, it was one of the discussions we were having just earlier. When you look at the statistics across what has happened during COVID, one of the most alarming statistics that's come out, and this has not been like a centralized thing. It's not based on demographics, it's not based on ethnicity, it's not based on culture, it's not regional, but across the United States, one of the things that we've seen across the board is a rise in domestic violence. And it's one of the craziest things that we've seen. And you and I have had some conversations before about what it means not just to be a good man, but to be a godly man.
Yeah.
And where that in our current climate has kind of broken down in some ways. And so I wanted to just hop on here a little bit because I know we've got kids that are in high school that listen to our show.
Right.
We've got college students. We've got guys in, and in the upper echelon, men that are our chronological superiors, if you will. What do you call them? Seasoned saints.
Seasoned
the
saints,
seasoned
brother,
saints, baby.
seasoned.
That listen to the show, and we've got women who are married or have boyfriends and things like that. What do you think are the most important things that we as men can do to be encouraging, to be uplifting, to be empowering? What are the things that we can do as men that promote those things, not just in the house and in our families, but just everywhere we go?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, brother. Even as you were forming it, I was kind of thinking, and I think we have to do some work with ourselves.
Okay.
And I know that's not giving, a definitive action, that we would do outwardly.
Right.
But I think it's to kind of get comfortable in our own skin, and be content with who it is that we are as an individual, as a man. That there's a lot of comparing, that takes place, who's stronger, who's faster, who's this,
who's prettier.
Well,
all that.
We already know some of that stuff. We don't have to ask those questions.
Yeah.
But there's this thing about how much of a man am I really, and I need to make sure everybody understands that I am a man and what that means. And I think, Luke is looking at, at least looking at myself is like, man, I had to kind of get to the point where I was content with how God had made me. Like, the way that I was wired, that it's, okay to like this if everybody else likes that, right? I can be different. And because can be cool in my own skin, I'm in a better position to encourage somebody else because I'm not necessarily looking for something in return to help me feel more complete.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that's got to be one of the big things, and there's a difference between confidence and arrogance.
Yeah,
sure. And I think one of the things that a lot of men we fall on that line, like we want to be capable of doing something, right? I want to know that you talked about strength. We both work out. I want to know that I can go and deadlift, and 200 pounds. I want to know that I can bench press. That first time you slap one plate on each side, it's like, oh my God, that 135 for the first time. You just want to get them to roar, when you're in junior high school, whatever. You want to know that you can do that, but you also, somewhere in the back of your mind, you want everybody else to have the confidence that you can too.
Absolutely.
So how do you get to that point where you can be confident, you can instill confidence in others, but not be arrogant where you're having to tell everybody how great you are and how much you're about to do this, to where you look foolish?
Yeah. I kind of like the saying goes, if you have to tell everybody you're the boss, you're probably not, right?
Ooh.
If you have to tell everybody that I'm a man, well, okay, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it's serving, man. I think it's finding that place where you can see yourself as a resource for others, right?
Yeah.
With the servant mindset that you're helping, you're investing in others, you're helping others to be better, right? To reach their potential, and you being content with investing in somebody else's life, man. I think modeling is huge. We were talking a little earlier about, how does that look vis-a-vis our relationship with the Lord and how that looks in the marriage context, right? There's certain things that we should be modeling in our relationship with God that is so visible that those within our household and even those outside in the community can see.
Right.
Right. That a great degree of humility, the confident, and there's a way to be confident, and to exude confidence without being a jerk, right? You can be right without being rude, right? You can speak your mind. You can share your perspective without at the same time denigrating somebody else's, right? There's a way that you can, having assessed the situation and communicating it with the intention that we all work together, to get the right solution, right? It's not necessarily about that you were the one, it's your conclusion that we use, but it's you sharing your perspective so that we all kind of get to a better spot.
Yeah. One of the things I've always heard about the difference in a conversation between a person that's confident and a person that's arrogant is a person that's confident has the ability to listen.
Yeah.
And a person that's arrogant only has the ability to defend. Right? That if you say something against me, well, then my ego will not allow me to be wrong. So I have to do this. But a confident person will be able to listen and to take that perspective. One of the big things that we've talked about on this show and that we're seeing other people talk about, Sarah Silverman just actually did a post about this, as well as Keira Davis, who we were talking about earlier off air, is we've lost the ability within our culture to talk to one another when we're on opposite sides of an issue, whether it's a religious issue, a political issue, a financial issue, whatever that is. If we feel like we're on opposite sides of an issue, then we summarily dismiss one another.
Right.
I think one of the things that really had an impact on me whenever I was growing up is I've got a buddy named Randall Harris who grew up in DeSoto. And whenever I would, pick him up, whenever we were going to work out together, or whenever we were traveling together, when we were doing stuff on the road, we would stop at this Waffle House in DeSoto. And in this Waffle House in DeSoto, his dad's name was, I actually don't know what the man's real name was. We all just called him Cadillac.
Okay.
So we walk in and he was holding court in this little corner of the Waffle House.
Okay.
And there was the same 5 guys that were there every morning at the Waffle House with a coffee and a side of bacon and then a whole, all you could eat hash browns. And that was it. But all day they would sit there, or all morning they would sit there and talk.
Right.
And they were talking about the things that were happening in their community. They would sit there and argue with one another, and they would have discussions. And, they'd known each other for years and years and years. But there was this open exchange of ideas. There was camaraderie between all the people that were there. But Randall and I, we saw that, we watched that whenever we were younger. And so as we grew up and now have become men with families of our own, we are modeling that in our conversations with one another and with other people.
Right.
We aren't seeing that there are a lot of men, especially, that are getting together, that are modeling that to their kids, to their spouses, to the people that are around them, about just being able to have, open discussion and just really, this country was founded on the open exchange of ideas, and we've lost the ability to do that. How can we get men together to do those kind of things? Because in the Lake Cities, we don't have a Waffle House.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But and I don't mean that in the sense that we don't have the Waffle House in general.
Right.
But we don't have a central gathering place of like, hey, this is where we're getting together. We're going to have coffee. We're going to talk. We're going to argue or whatever else. Right. And at the end of the day, we're going to shake each other's hands. And some of us are going to go over here and help this guy fix his toilet. And the rest of us are going to put up his fence. And, John's going to have to get home because that's what his wife tells him to do. Yeah. That's the whole deal.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, for a lot of communities, it's the barbershop,
right,
or the basketball court, sometimes the gym. I think you're right. I'm concerned that men don't slow down enough to kind of really have those conversations, and when we do, we're often, in circles where we share a lot of the same ideas,
right?
And that's frankly that's one of my challenges with groupthink. In a lot of circles, it's not safe to have a perspective that's different from the group.
Yeah.
Even being men, we just you just decide we're going to avoid the whole conversation. Like, I don't have the energy to want to fight through this or to go back and forth. And we have become so polarized, that any movement towards a middle solution, or just a, slightly, a different opinion that moves away from where the group is, can create a chilling effect, in terms of people sharing their perspectives, because not so much that people are buying into them, but it just feels so foreign to not just nod your head and in support of the majority perspective. In terms of where those places are, I think, in the like Cadillac's perspective, he was willing to seize some territory, in a Waffle House with folks who clearly cared enough about what he had to say or about him. Let's just say about him.
Yeah.
To be in that circle, and they, thankfully it worked through maybe some of those other, impediments to people building camaraderie. I think we just got to get into a space, Doc. I don't know where it is, whether it's on a project, whether it's, now I've made friends. I'll give you an example. There's a guy that I respect and love very dearly, who I just happen to have on a T-shirt that either says something about God or said something about our church or something.
Yeah.
And I was lifting. He said, "Man, I like your shirt." Walked off. That was it.
Yeah.
Next time I saw him, it's, "Hey, how's it going?" Man, before long, we were talking all the time. We're talking after our work. It didn't work out together.
Right.
But as, if one was leaving while the other was leaving, we touched base, man. And before long, man, we were, Christian brothers, man. And so we would create these spaces where we could talk and share. And I think, man, many guys nowadays, man, are just trying to go to work, mind their business and go home. I mean, and don't always see the value of that kind of discussion, unless they're at the barbershop, right? Waiting on the, whoever's next.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
There's a guy that we interviewed for the other podcast that I host, The Reverend and the Reprobate, named Stephen Mansfield, and he's written extensively on manhood, and some of it is the decline of manhood, but also some of the bright spots that he sees in our current culture. And one of the things that he really talks about is like you were saying, with your experience with the guy at the gym, is that men, we build a lot of our relationships indirectly. Mm-hmm. And so, like, if there's for instance, churches do a lot of like men's conferences. If there's a men's conference and somebody's wife tells them to go to the men's conference, that dude is going to be totally disengaged while he's there, right? He's going to come back and he's going to be like, "Thank you. I did the spiritual thing. Let me check that off the list. Now my wife is happy about that. And now I can go unbothered to do the things that I really want to do."
Right.
But a lot of the relationships that we have, I mean, even our friendship, we were at a couple of events together, said hi, talked for 2 or 3 minutes, and we were like, you know what, I think that guy's pretty cool. But it wasn't until we started doing, the podcast together and really focusing in on a lot of community stuff that relationship grew. A lot of relationships with men are like that. They're built indirectly.
Yeah.
And so I think what it's really going to take is for a few people to say, "Hey, we're going to do this." One of the things we've done with our church, and you and I have talked about it, is we have a campfire. We pick one Friday night out of the month, and we set up a campfire over at the Hickory Creek campgrounds, and we just get together and hang out. Yeah. Everybody, brings a cooler with, sodas or water or whatever else in it. One of the guys always grabs like a whole mess of, he's obsessed right now with the sausage on a stick from Buc-ee's. So he like just buys, all the sausage on a stick that they have, brings them over, we hang out, and we just sit around the fire. And if we don't say anything, we don't say anything.
Right.
But there's nobody there to encourage us to talk. But once we just start hanging out for a while, somebody's eventually going to break the silence.
Sure.
And we're all going to have an opinion about it, even if our opinion is, "Well, no, I don't really like Lord of the Rings. That's kind of stupid to me," which is what I get a lot. I start talking about Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, please, something else." I was like, "Well, you change the subject."
Yeah,
but those are the kind of things that start those conversations. One of the things I think when we look and we kind of take a broad approach, right? We've talked about how you need to deal with yourself, how you need to be confident. We need to be doing things that improve ourselves, and I think working out is a big part of that. You see a lot of these guys that are in leadership that say that we should never stop learning. Right. So whether if you're a reader, then read. If you're not, the Lake Dallas Public Library, we had Natalie McAdams on a few weeks ago. If it's free to anybody in the Lake cities, I just signed up for it. I've got like 10 audiobooks. I've checked out all the audiobooks that I can this month. and I'm rolling through some stuff. And some of the stuff I'm listening to is super nerdy. Star Wars stuff. I'm listening to a book on chess because I need to beat my wife at chess. That's something that's like ingrained in me, right?
Yeah.
I'd say I just need to be competitive.
Sure.
Right?
I hear you.
Because I don't like getting spanked every time we do.
Time.
Yeah, it's just not bad. It's not good.
Yeah.
And then there's some other things that have to do with some of the stuff that's going on within the country and the cultural climate stuff, and just getting a balanced approach of like, what are both sides of this argument? Because I want to know, as a pastor and as somebody that cares about the community,
right? What
are kids seeing online? What are we getting? What are the actual issues and the different sides of the argument? So not preventing ourselves from learning, or not seeing learning as a bad thing, continuing to learn, I think is really good. Yeah. We talked about setting the example in the home, being willing to serve. I think the other big piece is to show that there is value in our relationships outside of just what we have at work.
Right.
We get so stuck in the idea that like I'm gonna go to work and then I go home, and then most of the relationships that people have whenever they get home, and this is not just us saying this is new studies and things that are showing this time and time again, are online. Whether it's through social media, whether it's through an online gaming platform,
right,
or we have these really weird relationships with people that are quote unquote influencers. If you look at people's Twitch streams or their YouTube accounts or things like that, we have these relationships that are built with people that we're never going to see, that we're never going to meet,
right,
and that have and probably will never have any idea who we are, no matter how much we comment, no matter how many times we're logging onto their stuff. And our relationships that we've built and are invested in are with these people that are outside of our community. And yet we still continue to be frustrated about the way that things are and yada, yada within our homes without ever being involved. Like building those relationships outside of the home with other people in the community, with your neighbors. Yeah. Like when's the last time you heard of or that you participated in a neighborhood cookout?
Oh, yeah. Mm-mm.
But how often did that happen when you were growing up, though?
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
That was a big thing. Block parties. Yeah, man. Yeah. We used to have on our house that burned down, that block, we would have block parties on it at least once a quarter. So 3 or 4 times a year, there was a block party. One of the guys had an inflatable company that he ran. He worked up with, I think, Texas Sumo, which are those big inflatable sumo wrestling suits.
Yeah.
He'd bring a couple of those out, a couple of times a year. And so we had these great block parties and things like that, and we've really gotten away from it. And I think especially with COVID, we've moved so far away from personal interaction because now it's even kind of scary.
Right.
That's one of the things that we need more than ever, because if we're just isolated,
it's not good.
We just stew.
That's it. We do. Yeah, and we need interact. I mean, we were built for communication, for interaction, for relationships.
Yeah.
We weren't built for isolation, nothing good happens, from long-term isolation, man.
Right.
Is not helpful. As you were talking, I wanted to ask you a question. Do you feel like men see their value? And what I'm asking stems from the conversation, the point you made about working and how a lot of guys, their identity is tied up in these activities. I work, or I play basketball, or I was a stud at this thing or that thing, and as I think about our culture, I'm just wondering if men see places where they are valued, and someone's like, do you realize that you can be a big fish in a small pond, right? And that we don't tend to see much value unless we're a big fish in the biggest pond there's around, but we can impact our neighborhood, right? We can be the guy that, hey, this is the sumo bounce house guy. Right. You can make an impact. And frankly, as I look at, as I read and I watch things, outside of clearly high level business stuff, political circles, There's, maybe the closest thing is maybe some of these fatherhood commercials, that they're running now. You don't have to be this, and you got the dad and the son doing the worm in the living room while the dog is like, "What's wrong with these people?" Yeah. But these places where we can seize some territory, and impact it. Do you feel like guys feel like their voice even matters? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think that there have been several areas where, from the conversations that I'm having and the stuff that I'm reading, where it looks like men feel very relegated. That this is the area, that this is the thing that you do, and that is who you are. And any venturing too far outside of that is you getting outside of your area of expertise, your area of purpose. And without getting too theological or philosophical, one of the things that I think we've really moved away from is the idea that our natural self, like who we are, and our mind, body, soul are not complementary. We've moved away from the idea that we were built with purpose.
Okay.
And we have shifted to this is, what you do. Your mind determines who you are. This determines what you do. And if those things are at odds with one another, let them be at odds, and you go into your room and figure out how to sort those things out. Well, throughout the course of history, we've seen that line of thinking ends in disaster, whether it's personal, whether it's communal, whatever it is. And I think that there are a lot of us who have gotten pigeonholed in that way, that we've determined, all right, well, this is my 9 to 5, this is what I do, and this is what I'm good for, and anything out of that is too far outside of my realm. Well, what we're seeing now is that men especially are changing careers 2 or 3 times. I mean, before I was a pastor, I was working at a Harley shop.
Right.
Before I worked at a Harley shop, I was a musician. Before that, I was installing security systems for ADT. I could have been lost in any one of those things and said, like, this is what I am, this is what my purpose is. But if I would have done that, then I would have never seen the opportunities and stuff around us.
Right.
And we get pigeonholed in convenience and in routine. Yeah. And when we are outside of other relationships, we're seeing right now, for men especially, that the amount of time that a man spends single, especially in Western culture, has skyrocketed. People are getting married later and later and later, and I'm part of that statistics. I mean, I wasn't married until I was 35.
Right.
So when we see that, then we have this pull back from engagement. And I think when we are building relationships with people, whether it's at church, whether it's at the office, whether it is, I go to like Liberation Coffee is a great example. There are guys that go to that coffee shop every day, and they know each other whenever they go in, and they have these conversations. The gym is another great place to do it. Right. Instead of having our headphones in and trying to keep everything locked down, having a conversation with somebody is such an important thing in our personal growth, but also into seeing that there's an expanse beside what we are in, because we're starting to get into that. I've always referred to it as the trudge. Okay. Right? I worked at Merrill Lynch for a couple of years, and there were these low-level guys that they all had the same walk. They had just graduated. They were trying to work themselves up to get their 66 and their 67, their security licenses, and they'd never looked up at anybody. They were looking down at their shoes. They knew what office they had to go to, or what, supply room or resource room or whatever they had to get to, and they didn't make eye contact with anybody. They just trudged. They had their, I'm going to do this, and then they moved from, thing to thing. But the guys that were, like we were talking about, the big fishes in the pond, were the ones that were confident. They were walking, knew where they were going, but they weren't ignoring everybody along the way. And me being an intern at the time, I was everybody's favorite because I didn't give a crap. Right. I knew this isn't what I was going to do long term. So if you wanted your coffee, that was fine. It might be cold when it gets there because I'm going to stop and talk to everybody. But there is some of that if we lose, what's the old saying? You lose the forest for the trees. Yeah. Because you're so focused on one thing, and when you do that, when you get so narrowly focused, when you stop learning, when you stop realizing how important it is to, do the dishes, because you're in the midst of your show. When you stop doing those things and you say, no, this is what I am, or this is who I am, then that's it. I think one of the big things that we get pigeonholed with is that idea that this is who I am and I can't change. Right. if we were working out the fact that who we are, what we think, all of those things work together in order to help us achieve the purpose that we have,
Sure.
we would see that, I can change.
Yeah.
I can change my situation. I can change my circumstances. If there's something I don't like about myself, then I can go change it. I'm not just talking like plastic therapy or plastic surgery.
Right.
But there are other things that we can do to change. We're in the gym because we want to change.
I
right?
need to change.
Yeah, we want to be healthy, but also we want to change.
Absolutely. So. That's good, man. And if there's a guy that's listening, man, and you're in this space where you recognize that you need to make some adjustments, man, go ahead on and take the steps.
Yeah.
If there are issues with personality, you don't like how you handle stress, or it's hard to keep your hands around, your anger and keep that stuff in the right kind of box, man, talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Right. For real. It's no shame in that. And honestly, I think the shame is when we see something in ourselves and we just try to ignore it, man.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, there's so much opportunity to be better, to continue to grow, like you say, whether that's learning or learning how to implement new tools, relational tools, getting outside of your comfort zone and making some new friends.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to have to take some risk.
That's it exactly.
Somebody's got to take some risk, man. And our whole relationship, man, started with somebody taking risk. It was you, right? Hey, we chopped it up. Somebody's got to say, hey, man, you want to get some coffee or
right? Yeah, let's do this.
You
right?
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Somebody's got to take a risk.
And I think Stephen Mansfield, who I mentioned earlier, said that there was one big thing that's missing from the lives of most men, and that is a controlled rowdiness. That like when we're little kids, we wrestle with our dads or with our granddads or with one another on the playground, right? As we grow up, that changes. He talked about this guy that's 94 years old, and every day he goes and he walks around the Mills Mall. And most of the Mills Mall, like Grapevine Mills, they're a 1 mile loop.
Okay.
And this dude, 94 years old, starts the timer and tries to beat a 10-minute mile every day, like weaving in and out of people and all that. And when he's done, he's exhausted.
Yeah.
Right? But that is his form of controlled rowdiness.
Yeah.
Is at 94 doing this like semi-jog to see whether or not he can do a mile in under 10 minutes still.
Yeah.
For some of us, controlled rowdiness is, the Waffle House where we go and we fight and argue and debate everybody that that we're with. Others of us, it's the gym that we just need something to work against. Some people, it's martial arts. Some people, it's camping. Whatever that is, it doesn't have to be something that's always physically exerting.
Right.
But if we don't have some kind of thing to be pushing against, to be fighting against, or some kind of rowdiness in our life, if we're not fighting something, we'll end up fighting the wrong things.
Right.
And I think that's one of the biggest things that has happened in the lives of men is that we have kind of resorted to like what we were talking about before. This is our norm. This is it. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to push things. So push yourself. Try new things.
That's right.
Check some stuff out. If you guys want to know more about some of the books that you mentioned, we'll put them down here in the comments section. Or if you want to get a hold of me or Chris, you can do that at the Lake Cities Podcast at gmail.com. We'll make sure to reach out and respond to you. And as we're sorting this stuff out, stay tuned. Maybe we'll decide to do something and say, hey, you know what? Let's get a bunch of guys together and go
eat some meat.
Yeah, that's it, man.
Let's go get rowdy.
You remember what was the name of that place? Love and Warren, Texas. Did you ever go there? So Love and Warren, Texas used to be out at right outside of Grapevine Mills Mall, and they had this thing called the Governor's Plate.
Oh my!
And the Governor's Plate was a 10-pound brisket, 2 racks of ribs, 4 chicken breasts, 3 steaks, 2 dozen bacon wrapped jalapeno poppers. It was like meat salad. It was the greatest thing ever. And if you're a man that's listening and you're a vegetarian, we will order you a regular salad and we will make everybody else the Governor's Plate.
That's it.
Well, hey, thank you guys for listening. We will see y'all next week. Be good and God bless.
Holla.
Chris and Lucas want to thank you for listening to the Lake Cities Podcast, a service provided by FBC Lake Dallas and Antioch Christian Fellowship. If you have a topic you would like for Chris and Lucas to discuss, email them at the lakecitiespodcast@gmail.com. Make sure you give us a review and click on the subscribe button to get the latest episodes each week.